Hello, I'm Rachel Bleemer, Director of Programming and Events for Film Independent, and welcome to this Q&A for the film Checkpoint Zoo, directed by Josh Zeman. Thank you to our lead sponsor, the Golden Globe Foundation, and our media sponsor, KCRW, and our virtual screening partner, Vision Media. Now, please join me in welcoming our guest for today's Q&A, Director Josh Zeman. Welcome, Josh, and thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Really a pleasure.
Congratulations on such an extraordinary doc. It's already won several awards, including audience awards, which I think are the best. At Napa
Me too.
Valley, Palm Springs, Tribeca, nominated for a Critics' Choice Award. It's truly deserved, and just congratulations on what it's already done here in the festival circuits.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
yeah, I like to start at the top of, of how this project found you, when you realized the story of Eco Park Zoo needed to be a feature-length film. Can you talk? It's kind of a loaded three-part question. Can
Sure.
you talk about, yeah, when you realized it needed to be a feature-length film? Can you talk about how it found you? And can you tell us a little bit about Chi Chi and how the chimp influenced you as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I think, like many documentarians or journalists, this idea of we always want to explore war, right? Because it's such a paradox. And so, myself included, I had done a previous film about nature. I had done a previous animal film called The Loneliest Whale. So I was really into animal films as a kind of palate cleanser to some of the other stuff that I do.
Hmm.
And that was a really satisfying journey to make an animal film. It's so I love how passionate people are about it. So I was looking to do another animal film. The war broke out in Ukraine, and like many people, I was really afraid, of what was going on. This was being called a kind of as big as World War II.
Hmm.
And so I saw an article and a piece of video on the front page of the New York Times about a chimp named Chi Chi, who had escaped from this zoo in Ukraine, an eco park. And this is in Kharkiv, which is in the second largest city, and it's only 30 miles from the Russian border. And Chi Chi was staying temporarily in the Kharkiv Zoo. She had been formerly staying at Eco Park Feldman, but Eco Park Feldman had been, as I read, had been bombed completely. So she's staying there temporarily, and she had escaped from the Kharkiv Zoo, and she was walking through the middle of Freedom Square, which is right in the middle of Kharkiv. And it was this was just 4 months into the war. And so as a filmmaker, I'm just looking at this story and it's all kind of right there. Like there's a
Hmm.
chimpanzee looking for its freedom while the Ukrainian people are looking for their freedom, and it's about sovereignty. And but but there was another thing. There was a piece of video and Chi Chi is walking across the square and all these people are watching this chimpanzee and they're smiling. And these are people who were being bombed indiscriminately and didn't know whether they were going to live or die from one day to the next. And it was the fact that this animal had kind of brought them out of that terror for just one moment that they were smiling. And I was like, okay, this is it right here. This is the power that animals have. And it's kind of like, you have a bad day and you go home and you snuggle with your animal. This
Hmm.
was like this kind of supercharged.
Yeah.
And it was just so amazing. And so I looked up Eco Park Feldman on Google. I found their telephone number. I literally just called them and I said, "Hi, my name is Josh Zeman. I'm a documentary filmmaker. Are you guys ever interested in a documentary?" And they didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Ukrainian, so we kind of had a problem. And they then called me back. One of the guys called me back the next day, and he's like, "Yes, of course, we would love documentary. Would you like me to send you a piece of footage that went viral?" And I was like, "Yes, please." And he sent me this one piece of footage of Timothy, this young volunteer driving of kind of taking a selfie and driving a van full of kangaroos away. And he's like looking at himself. He's like, "Hello, everybody. We're here evacuating, and I have friends with me." And he shows the back of the back of this Sprinter van full of kangaroos, and it was amazing. And the piece, this one piece of video had been on Colbert, and it was just
Hmm.
an amazing story. And from there, I was like, I was like, "Do you have any more?" And he's like, "I have many pieces of viral footage." And then he would just literally every night send us footage that these volunteers had taken. And I didn't really know this story, but I kind of pieced it together
Hmm.
from archive. And I really love that process of kind of discovering the story through archive. And I would speak to them over Zoom and get their story. And then about 6 months into the war, I went with another filmmaker named Olivier Sarbol. Olivier had done another documentary called Victor, and he was a director of photography. And so, I was like, "Hey, can you come shoot Eco Park Feldman?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." So we went over there. It was really hot. I had never been in a war before, uh,
Right.
wearing like flak jackets and helmets and flying into Warsaw and then taking a car across and then driving across and checkpoints and everything. It was wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had done like true crime stuff,
Right,
but
right. But
never
that was
this.
more, yeah, true crime and then jumping into war. I mean, you said it took about 6 months. When you started to do the archival footage, when you started to get these clips, did you know at that point, like, yep, I'm gonna have to go over there? Or maybe you were thinking, I can maybe do this from here. You knew you
No,
were,
I,
you wanted to go.
I wanted to go there.
Okay.
I very much knew that I would have to go over there to get their story. It would require it. There's no other way. Like you can't do things
Right.
remotely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go over there and tell them. And this had been about a month after the evacuation had been completed, and so they didn't really process a lot of it.
Yeah. I was gonna ask about that, the process, because I mean you're dealing, first of all, like the subjects, the zookeepers, they're giving performances, but they're not performances. These are like true emotion. They're grieving the losses of friends, of coworkers, of animals, and
Yeah,
then while still rescuing animals during an active war. I mean, it's so loaded. Um, I mean, was there any point while filming that you were able to like stop together and process what was going on, or was it just like we're moving, we have to just keep going through?
it's very interesting. It, people are like, "Were you scared?"
Right.
And I don't say this like trying to be a tough guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared, and they weren't scared either. And the reason is because it felt like whether saving animals or documenting people who were saving animals, you were like doing God's work.
Right.
And
That's
like it wasn't going to be your time.
right.
It was like this was too important. Like the
Right.
story was just too important. This was a story about people who were, putting the lives of others, whether this is whether there's animals or
Mhm.
human beings, this is all about creatures, sentient creatures and things like that. And it was about empathy and compassion and selflessness. And I think that's very much in short supply these days. So it just became this mission impossible, whether it was that what they were doing or whether it was me
Mhm.
telling their story and not even understanding a word of Ukrainian.
Yeah,
Um,
that's insane.
I, I remember going there the first time, and I had a guy who was our fixer, and I didn't have a lot of experience with foreign language films, and they would speak, and he would then tell me what they
Mhm.
had said, and it was just taking too long. And I was
Right.
like, you know what? You just tell me if they got it. If they
Mhm.
got it, and
Mhm.
I would just
Mhm.
watch their faces. I would just look at their faces, and if they emoted and if they got emotional, I knew we got it because it's
Mhm.
such an emotional story.
Mhm.
And it was so much was unwritten. So that was
Yeah.
going over there, and that was what it was like. These people were just doing such incredible work. War by definition strips away its brutality, strips away your humanity. Like that's
Mhm.
the goal of war, is to turn you into savages, to turn you into animals. And these people, by saving animals, not only refound their humanity, but I think gained something even greater, an appreciation for all of life in its most minute sense.
Mhm.
And it was almost so admirable what they were doing.
Completely. Did you feel like, did it take once you got there, did it take some time for them to get comfortable with a film crew, or were they just kind of just going, hitting the beats, going for it, and you know,
Are people seeing this interview after the film?
yes,
So when I got there, um, it was a month after Dennis had died.
got it.
They hadn't processed Dennis's death in the least, because they were on this mission
Right,
impossible
right,
to evacuate all the animals, and it had gone beautifully. They had done the mission impossible. They had gotten
right.
5,000 animals out with two sprinter vans, and nothing happened. And on the last day, the last hours of the last day, this
Hmm.
happens to Dennis.
Hmm.
So it was almost so too much for them.
Yeah,
And I put together a sizzle, and I didn't have the words to speak to them about what
yeah,
they had been through.
right.
And so I just showed them the sizzle.
Oh,
So I showed them the sizzle like 2 minute, like they would sit, they were gonna do the documentary anyway, but they sat down. I couldn't say anything. I showed them the sizzle, and they like just lost it emotionally. And they looked up and they said, "Let's start."
oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So, it gave, I think this was a moment for them to allow them to process what had been done.
Right.
So it was interesting. And we went the first time, and then we went back the second time once I kind of knew the story a little bit more and
Okay.
had more questions. So we went back again like another 8 months later. At that time I went back more with like a bigger crew. The
Got
first
it.
time was just me and Olivier.
Getting that. Right.
The second time it was like, okay, it was me and another DP, but we got a crew and then had more kind of structured interviews.
Interviews and such, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and
That
tried
makes
to match them to the first.
Oof. How long was the process from, first clip received until final cut?
A year, but we also had four editors. We were kind of
Wow.
rushing. We knew that there was a number of Ukrainian films. We were getting the footage, and it was completely just unorganized. It was just kids shooting their cell phones. So a lot of
Right.
it was coming
Right.
over cell phones. The question was, is this going to work theatrically?
Yeah.
So that footage took a lot of time
Yeah.
to prep,
Yeah.
and we did not still didn't understand the language, so we had to like transcribe and go through everything and do that.
Mhm.
And when Vadim kept sending me the clips, there were like 5,000 30-second clips. And I'm like, Vadim, why are all these clips 30 seconds? And he's like, well, TikTok is 30 seconds. No. So they had been shooting, like they knew what they were shooting was
Yeah.
important, but they were documenting for like putting on social.
For
And
social. Right. Right.
I was
Oh
like,
my
oh my
gosh.
God, am I gonna have like just one long montage, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
But that is,
it's hard. And then so what I ended up doing was finding a whole bunch of news organizations that had also been there,
okay.
and then speak to them and say, hey, can I get your footage? Because in the news you want other things to talk about than just like how's the war going that day.
Right.
And the fact
Right.
that they had these animal evacuations was
Hmm.
really was a good kind of human interest story. So they went and shot it,
Yeah.
whether they filmed it or not.
Right.
Whether they aired the footage or not, they had shot this stuff. And so it took a while. And uh, on one of the trips, I was literally like driving to the outskirts of Ukraine to speak to some guy who had a whole bunch of footage that he had on his cell phone. Like I was driving
Wow.
around Ukraine just to get shots of that people had on their cell phones, because that's
Wow.
how they were documenting everything.
That's crazy. Your editors and I mean, you did such a seamless job. Like just knowing now the amount of different sort of film um clips that you had to work with, you really did a beautiful job of balancing like the quiet moments, the like
Mm.
really rushed moments. It's just this the urgency, emotional urgency elements of it. It's really your team of editors, and you did a beautiful job. Now,
Yeah, they
more so, I had that written down, but now even knowing the amount of footage you were dealing with at a fast pace, that's incredible.
and
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, let's find our core animals, and each person almost has an animal. What's very interesting is we were like, okay, how are we going to make this, like, what's the
Right.
theme? Like, what's our reference? And we're like, okay, they're saying this is World War II, and this is like an impossible mission. How do you rescue animals, predators,
Right.
from a
Right.
war zone? It's like
Right.
terrifyingly dangerous. And it's like, okay, well, let's make this like where Eagles Dare,
Mhm.
or, you know, uh,
Mhm.
Kelly's Heroes or Inglorious Bastards. So it
Mhm.
definitely had that kind of like, here's the team,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
let's try and get this out. And ironically, they fit that mold perfectly. I mean, you've got Andre, the kind of big guy
Yeah.
with the
Love
heart of
him.
gold, or
Mhm.
the woman that curses worse than any sailor you've ever met, or the
Yeah.
boss who cries at the drop of a hat. And so
Right.
they all fit, and then the boys, they all fit those roles. And so that allowed us to kind of just concentrate on the mission
Yeah.
and structure it like that. And once you kind of give yourself over to that story, and then it's fine. The other thing is, it's like, you ever like when you see these little clips, it's like those little clips on YouTube or social media where like somebody rescues a whale and you think the whale is turning around saying thank you,
Right. Right.
or
Yep.
the
I've
or
seen
the
those.
wreck.
The crabs with the barnacles that their clips are
Yeah,
on.
or
Yeah.
like,
I love
you know,
those.
you
Yeah.
you pull the bucket off the raccoon's head, and the raccoon's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was like thousands of those clips. And so
Wow.
there's so much, like, it allows the audience to fill in the blanks of
Hmm.
like what's going on. Like, does the animal know? And they could prescribe all these emotions that may or may not be there. We don't even know, but yet at the same time, they're telling me, and I saw it. Like, they were dealing with terrifyingly dangerous animals, and the animals would just like, they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Let's put up steel barriers. Okay, let's back the
Right.
vehicle up. And
Yeah.
they're all freaked out at what's going to happen. And they would open up the door, and the animal would just stroll out and literally jump right in the van. And they would close the door and just drive off.
Amazing. I mean,
The,
you
the
see all,
animals
yeah.
wasn't what they were worried about. It was the Russians.
Right. Right. The biggest predator.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because I mean, just when it's 4th of July here, your dogs go crazy with fireworks. Seeing what at the beginning of the documentary, what just hearing the sounds of the bombs being around the facility was doing to the animals, having heart attacks. I mean, some of that was so difficult to
And
yeah,
the worst thing would be to make a film about animals for people who love animals, but they can't watch the film because they
right,
think it's going to be too much for them. So
right.
we specifically like didn't do a lot of it, and
Yeah, little pieces, exactly.
the hard marketing of it is like, how do you market a film, to people that's like,
Right,
who love animals so much but don't want to watch them in distress. But it's like, no,
right,
if you don't understand, if you watch this film, it's not like that. You're actually going to
right.
come out with this unbelievable appreciation for humanity and
Correct.
animals. But
Correct.
getting the asses and seats is always difficult in that respect. So so we made sure not to do that. But I mean,
You have to include.
you have to include a little bit. You have to
Yeah,
include a little
a
bit.
little bit. Yeah,
But when you think about it, your most primal um, instinct is to run when there is danger.
right.
A bomb comes off. You don't know what it is. You run. And these animals, because they're in cages, cannot run. They cannot engage their core
Mhm.
primary thing. And that is stressful. Now, imagine 4th of July every single day, hours upon hours on end. And that is what it was like. And for these animals that could not run. And so it's terrifying. It's terrifying, knowing all of those things. And there was so much more we could have put in, and it wasn't even necessary.
Right. Whew. Um, for you, I mean, how from when you started to now, how have you changed? I mean, this is a heavy subject matter, and yes, there is a lot of humanitarian like warmth and like we're gonna be okay if we're all in this together. And I just how are you doing? How are you dealing, afterwards with all of this? I mean, it's such an important story that you've told.
Yeah, I mean, all of these stories make you a better person.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Hmm.
And understanding what is really important when it comes to empathy, when it comes to compassion,
Yeah.
when it comes to selflessness. Like I went back to Ukraine 2 months ago
Wow.
for the third time, and I showed the film in Kharkiv to the people. Um,
Okay.
so I went all the way to the edge, again, 30 miles away from the Russian border, showed the film to the people. Well, we couldn't even see it in a theater because worried about bombs hitting a theater full of people. So we had to show it outside. And the pictures of everybody just watching a story about them
Yeah.
being heroes and giving hope, I think is a really interesting thing. Like at
Yeah.
the time that I was doing it, some people were like, "No, no, 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 you can't be so hopeful." And I was like,
Have
"We have to be,
we
you
have
know."
to be. Wow.
And
Wow.
so going back there, that was a real kind of closing the circle for me in terms of being able to show the film and just, as a filmmaker journey, you don't,
Mhm.
it doesn't get any, awards, box office,
Right.
it's about like connecting with your audience and like showing them a film that shows them how heroic they are and how we need to be better. I mean, here we are having conversations in the United States about patriotism, about democracy. And I had asked one of the guys there, Kharkiv is very, for lack of a better kind of context,
Hmm.
it's so close to the Russian border. They speak Russian. Their culture is very much Russian. A lot of their family is over in Russia, and so it's a real problem for them, And I was like, guys, like, why don't you just like acquiesce? Why don't you just say, okay, and live to fight another day? Okay, we're Russian for the next 4 years. We'll live to fight
Right.
another day.
Right.
And they were like, no. They are like, we've had a choice and
Hmm.
we appreciate that choice and we've now have freedom and that freedom of choice and we're not going back and we will die. Like these guys were like
Right.
hardcore. They were like, we
Die
will
before go.
die
Yep.
before that ever happens. And I was like, wow. I was like, we want to talk about like
Yeah.
love
Patriotism. Right.
in this country. I was like,
Right.
you should bring some of these guys over because like these
True.
guys are going through it
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
in the most hardcore ways. And so
Mm.
so they're really funny, like beautiful and like gallows humor folks, and they're fighting for their freedom. They're fighting for choice.
Right.
And so when you do have that story and you want to get it out there, and then there's all these the noise of this politics that's going around us,
Right.
you just realize, man, what's really important in life and what's really important, and playing the politics and everything. Like I knew that before, but to feel it and to know these people and
Yeah.
to know what they're fighting for
Hmm.
and to see that they're risking their lives to save animals because it's that important to them.
Right. Incredible. I did have a question about if you had brought it back to the Ukraine, and you answered that.
Yeah.
You sure did.
Y-
That's
y-
a
y-
yeah.
I'm not even Ukrainian,
Right.
and so, but I admire
But
people
you're human.
yeah, and I admire people who are fighting for something real,
Yeah.
who do it with, who do it with compassion and empathy. Like that's what we need to be celebrating. Those are real heroes. Like, so there's a scene in the film that for me encompasses kind of the whole film.
Hmm.
It's when the father is showing his blood-stained hands to the Russian soldier, and he says, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, this is the blood of my son. And that soldier was the soldier who had shot the mortars that killed the boy. And Andre, who's that big burly guy, he had
Hmm.
told
Hmm.
me he was like, this guy's sweet, but he's can also, he's seen some stuff. And he said, I was going to kill the soldier. I had a huge knife, and I was going to kill the soldier, and nobody would have said a thing. And I would have
Mm, that me?
gone and said, I won't let you because then we'll be just like them. And Andre said to me, that was the moment that he really understood what bravery was. Bravery is not always fighting, but knowing when not to fight. And those are the moments that I remember. Those are the moments that are so powerful to me because we're not just talking about warriors in that sense. We're talking about human beings who are fighting.
My goodness. I want to just keep asking more and more questions, but we're like almost at
Sorry.
time. No, no, this has been so insightful and truly very moving. Um, how moving forward, how do you hope people remember or feel as they are watching this film? As we're pushing it out, we want it to keep going. I know the festival circuit,
Yeah.
kind of comes to this end, but the war's still happening, and um, this is still very much a real situation. Um,
For us, I mean, it's an anti-war film in general. Like, yes, it doesn't have to be about every war. This is about every war,
right,
because we don't think about animals in any of these situations. You know,
right,
this is about every war and the paradoxes of war and what doesn't make sense about war and the victims and the innocent victims that we never thought about. Um, the those parents of that boy, they were older. They were actually a little older because they had been trying to conceive for 15 years.
oh, God,
And then their 15-year-old kid dies. And she was desperate for me to tell the story. Desperate. Wanted the world to know what war does. So it's that story. And of course, it's the story of Ukraine, and what's going on there right now. This is a war of attrition. Like the first 3 years are easy compared to what the next 2 years are going to be, because that is what Putin is relying on. Everybody, all of us, to it's just like, oh, I'm so tired of hearing of war,
right,
and
right,
oh,
right.
like he's expecting all of that to happen. But every now and then there are pockets of hope, and this is a pocket of hope.
Um, have you decided what you're going to be doing next? Are you sticking to war? Are you going kind of back to true crime or
I kind of like to go back and forth.
yeah,
I do a little true crime, and then I do an animal movie. I did a previous one about a whale, a lonely whale,
yeah.
and going on a search for a lonely whale. So I like to go back and forth.
Mhm.
The mysteries of the animal world are just as interesting as the mysteries of the true crime world. And so,
Amen. Yeah.
they're just so fat. Both of them are fascinating.
Yeah.
So I love mysteries in that respect. I love stories that make us feel.
Hmm.
Um, Working on a narrative about, interestingly enough, a war journalist. So I definitely love that idea. The war journalist story is just so interesting to me. So, and journalism in general, I really love. And so, look, another freedom fighter, if you will, in a kind of in a difficult war that's going on right now.
Yeah. Please keep Film Independent posted. We'll be following up with you and just
Absolutely.
want to support you in your work. We're so moved by this documentary and so happy to bring it to our membership and hoping to get it out to audiences everywhere. Checkpoint Zoo is available on streaming. If you haven't watched it yet, I truly recommend that you do. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Josh, for making this documentary and for
Thank
your
you.
time today. This was really an exceptional Q&A. One of my favorites, I have to say. This was very, very, very special. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
And we will talk soon.
All right. Bye, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.